I'm struggling with how to get past my wife's behavior on a trip. My wife and I are on vacation in Italy. We've been in the country for about a week and are here for another week. A couple days ago we did a wine tour in Tuscany, which was one of the things my wife was most looking forward to. She overindulged. 5 tastings at the first vineyard we went to, and 6 to 8 glasses, I didn't keep an exact count, at lunch. She told me a couple times that she was pretty drunk. My wife also gets a bit carsick. She'd had a little trouble on our earlier trip to Pompeii with the bumpy winding roads. I recommended she take Dramamine, but she drank enough that she forgot. She threw up in the tour bus twice on the way back to our hotel. The driver politely told us that we weren't welcome anymore and suggested we call a cab. We waited at a rest stop for about an hour and she said she was fine, so I called a cab to take us back. She threw up in the cab too. It ended up costing me about €300 altogether in hefty tips and cleaning fees. Our hotel is in a restricted traffic zone, so we had to walk a couple hundred meters. By that point she was covered in vomit and I had a good bit on me as well. I was pretty pissed and disgusted with my wife, so I was walking a bit away from her. Frankly, I didn't really want to be seen with her. She could tell I was angry and asked what was wrong when we got back to the hotel room. I wasn't kind. I told her that her behavior was disgraceful, that she embarrassed both of us, and reminded her that she was a 40-year-old mother of 2, not a 19-year-old sorority girl, and she needed to act like it. She started making excuses. She told me she didn't think she had that much to drink, that she thought she had food poisoning and didn't feel good. I showered and went to the pharmacy to get her some anti-nausea drugs, made sure that she wasn't going to choke on her own vomit or anything, and left. I didn't want to be around her anymore. I had dinner and walked around the city some to cool off, and when I got back she was asleep. The next morning when we woke up she laid into me for not supporting her more and for being so mean to her when she had food poisoning. I didn't directly call her a liar, but I didn't apologize either. So now we're a day later and it's seriously affecting our trip. I'm pissed because she got sloppy drunk and humiliated us. She's pissed because I don't buy her food poisoning story. I'm not sure how we move past this. She seems to want to sweep it under the rug and for me to apologize. I think she's the one who needs to apologize. What do we do here? Edit, y'all love reading way too much into things. My wife isn't an alcoholic, she just got way too excited about Tuscan wine and drank too much of it. I didn't go into a blind rage or verbally abuse her, I was irritated and made a couple comments in anger. I didn't abandon her on the streets to die choking on her own vomit in a gutter. I walked 5 steps ahead of her for a couple blocks. And we're okay now. She apologized profusely this afternoon. She admitted she drank way too much. There was no food poisoning involved, though some carsickness probably was. She apologized for costing us a bunch of money and making a scene. She told me she didn't want to admit it yesterday morning because she was embarrassed and still hungover and feeling bad. I apologized for my comments. She thanked me for taking care of everything. We moved on and will enjoy the rest of our vacation. Comment. Wife, you went through 5 tastings and 6 to 8 glasses of wine. That's the equivalent of about 1.5 bottles to 2 bottles of wine. You did not have food poisoning. You were drunk. Own up to your behavior. I've had food poisoning a few times. I've been sloppy drunk loads more times. You know, the only thing stopping me from knowing I'm about to be sick from food poisoning and getting to a toilet/getting a sick bag? Being sloppy drunk. She clearly drank too much. That said, it isn't an impossibility that one set of a couple gets food poisoning. Even if they ate at the same places, doesn't mean they ordered the same thing. We went to California and my so had fish tacos, which were breaded with eggs that had salmonella. We later found out from a news report. I did not. Only one of us spent the next 30 to 36 hours strapped to a toilet. Wife was sloppy drunk and embarrassing, but yes, food poisoning can affect one person and not another depending on how your body reacts to whatever bacteria is in that food. I've taken 6-hour food safety classes on this. Not an expert by any means, just a restaurant manager who has to know these things in order to not poison people. Just last week my boyfriend was sick for almost 2 days and I was fine, and we both ate the same thing, so it can affect only one person. And I'm usually the one in the bathroom with a weak stomach while he's fine, so it was a shock this time that whatever it was affected him so badly. Then you're more generous than I would be. Don't get me wrong, I wouldn't be angry on principle when someone drank too much. I have a wild youth behind myself. The thing is, on a vacation when testing wine and one has to take a bus, she is too old not to know that this is not when you get drunk. I'd feel so embarrassed for her myself. I definitely had enough of her for 2 days, even with an apology. That would only stop me from telling her how annoyed I was and just take some peace from her. To get drunk during a wine tour is just such a trashy cliche. You don't need to do a wine tour to get nice wine in Italy. If she wanted to drink a lot, she could have gone to a bar in the evening. I agree. We all shouldn't have these kinds of moments past our 20s. It is not normal to drink so much that you are throwing up all over the place and impacting the lives of other people who also paid a bunch of money for that tour. I truly hope the wife is mortified that she not only ruined her husband's day, but likely at least a dozen other people who could have been there trying to celebrate something special to them or even be getting through a hard time. It is not okay to behave like that as an adult. In any circumstance, if you ask me, and that is exactly why I quit drinking. I don't know, brother. Okay, so she had her drunken wine mom moment and got sloppy AF. It's not a great look, and I get being embarrassed and disgusted because vomit is disgusting, but you know. The food poisoning excuse is because she's embarrassed. Unless she has a legit drinking problem, I'd cut her slack. Like you said, this is the mother of your kids. I think you both owe each other apologies honestly, but you need to initiate even if it burns a little. I suspect if you soften, she'll likely acknowledge she had too much. Next story 2. My partner told me that I need to handle my grief more appropriately. For context, my dad passed away 6 months ago. At the time, my partner and I had been dating for 8 months. My dad had leukemia and no wife. Just my little brother and I. When things started to get really bad, I stepped up to take care of him. This included helping him use the bathroom, doctor appointments, signing off on end-of-life treatment, and eventually sitting by him in hospice. After he passed, I handled his funeral, burial, will, finances, estate, and any other business or outstanding affairs he had. During this time, my partner showed up for me on and off. There were days he actually picked me up off the floor. Yet he also would stop speaking to me entirely for a week, 2 weeks on and off, as dealing with everything I was handling was overwhelming. This ended about 3 months ago when I drew a hard boundary that he couldn't stop speaking to me suddenly, as it was affecting my mental health. I wasn't able to step out of care mode for almost 4 months as there was so much to handle financially and business-wise. My dad ran his own business. When I finally did, processing what had happened came to the forefront. Also, to preface, I have been seeing a therapist weekly for the past 4 months. I started biking, going to yoga, quit alcohol, changed my diet entirely, writing, sewing, reading, etc. Just recently, I have been feeling grief extra heavy. I've been having more heavy moments in the past 3 to 4 weeks. Called him on my way to work crying as I couldn't stop thinking about my dad. Spent a few days unable to get out of bed until I physically had to do something, which is very unlike me. I also went to his office a few days ago. It was just him and I there. He's a massage therapist. His office is on the same street as my dad's hospice center. I'm not sure why, but when I turned down the road I just started uncontrollably sobbing. It was very triggering out of nowhere. I was a mess and crying in the corner of his office, where he got upset and asked me why I'm crying. I told him I just needed a hug, and he said he doesn't want to touch me when I'm like this. After we finished at his office, he told me he feels like I don't understand how to appropriately handle my grief and that I cry a lot over my dad. He said seeing me sad is affecting him too much and that he wants me to be happy if we're going to be together. That it's putting him through it to see me like this and making him depressed, and that I only think about myself when it comes to feeling sadness. He asked that I learn how to compartmentalize my feelings and choose happy, as it would benefit our relationship for me to be able to handle my feelings of grief better. He has expressed he doesn't want to continue our relationship if I cannot do so. I'm distraught. Genuinely, I feel like a very happy and positive person outside of my grief. I still enjoy myself and spend time with friends and go out and participate in activities. Should I be keeping my feelings to myself on this? Is it inappropriate to cry about something so much in front of someone? I always opened up to him about my feelings as I felt like it was a safe thing to do with a partner. Comment. Agree with Mama_Bongo. At this point, the best thing to do for yourself is focus solely on yourself. BF can then not worry about it? Discuss with your therapist, as I would think this is something they should be able to provide feedback on. Grief is different for everyone and it requires the time it takes. With long illnesses, some people grieve during that time, so by the time the person passes they are at peace with it. They at times are then criticized for being uncaring as they aren't a hot blubbering mess. Stupid things can trigger grief. If a person drank a specific brand of coffee, hearing a commercial for that coffee could trigger grief or maybe a fond memory. Grieve as you need to. Carry a full box of Kleenex to use as needed and apologize to no one. Compartmentalizing your emotions is not healthy. People go to therapy to learn how to stop doing it. Now, there's such a thing as setting aside your emotions temporarily, like waiting until you get home to cry, but for a loss like yours, it's not unreasonable to not be able to do so. Your partner is a jerk, and if he expects his partner to always be happy around him, he needs a dog, not a human. And not to mention, if you have kids with him, and what if you were to get postnatal depression? Would he dump you because you're too sad then? What a horrible man. My friend's mum passed about 3 years ago, and she is only just starting to be human again and not a wreck. Lost numerous friends because she wasn't moving forward. Never would I abandon a friend, but especially a partner, for their grief. Everyone grieves differently. Then stop calling him. I joke, and I understand you are still in loss and your brain may see the ending of this relationship as more loss to be avoided, but this relationship is not benefiting you, short or long term. This man is not helping you. He does not even seem to like you. And he is a weak, pathetic, unripened tomato of a man who thinks his stunted, loser, waste of being alive state of being is better than you. Why are you crying? I don't want to touch you when you're like this. Your grief is so hard on me. Eat shit, asshole. I'm livid on your behalf. Part of processing grief is a period of time where you can't feel anger when you should. You should be furious at this treatment. I wouldn't treat a junkie on the street as bad as this partner is treating you. Therapists generally cannot give straightforward advice per se, but can you try to float your therapist for their opinion on this? Because I sense you may be in a numbness that is keeping you from seeing clearly exactly how mistreated you are. That's a really toxic mentality to not only pass on to your child but to buy into as an adult, given the age we live in. We live in a time where mental health is not taboo and becoming better understood. Maybe I'm just being judgmental. I really don't like the person you described as your partner, but this is a level of ineptitude that's dangerous. Not just to you in your current state, but for the future as well. Grief is different for everyone, and unless it's getting unhealthy, which crying is not unhealthy, you can't dictate or diminish another's journey through it. He sounds like a major D-bag. I'm sorry he made you feel terrible for what is completely normal and rational.